Hey, it's Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and today we are talking about the Stefan Feld City Collection, Hamburg and Amsterdam by Queen Games. And this is simultaneously an interesting one, a positive one, a frustrating one. It's basically everything wrapped up together. Now, to give some overview, to give some background to what's going on here, this is basically a partnership between Stefan Feld and Queen Games. Stefan Feld owns the right to a bunch of his prior games, and together with Queen Games, they are reprinting some of those games along with bringing new ones to the table. And this is effectively being divided up into three phases, two that we know about and one that's a little bit more vague. The first is this Kickstarter. This Kickstarter right here is Hamburg and Amsterdam, which are two reprints of existing games. We'll come back to that. Then next up, they're going to have another Kickstarter with two more reprints, two more games, one reprint of an existing game and one fresh off the boat new Stefan Feld title. And then additionally, the part that's a little bit uncertain, a little bit more vague, is the fact that they mentioned that this is an ongoing collaboration with Stefan Feld with multiple things planned, and they have at least 8 hypothetical things planned. So you can expect potentially 4 more, although it's a little bit of a hybrid there. It's potentially, you never really know what the future will bring, but if they're saying the number 8, and this Kickstarter has already exceeded Queen Games' past Kickstarter. I believe this is their best Kickstarter to date. So combine success and money with already having plans in the background, and you can bet that you're probably going to see those additional 4 titles, whether they're reprints, new ones, a combination of both. And additionally, it may keep going from there as long as people can sell something that people like and be profitable while doing so. As long as that can happen, you can expect to continue to see it. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, generally, if you produce a good, or in this case, a game that people like and people buy it, usually it is a win-win. Although in this case, it is not as clear, although it is and it isn't. It's really just frustrating is the word I would use, but let's go into that. So as a beginning statement, it is worth noting off the bat that they have already said that this is not going to be, there are currently no plans to sell either games into distribution. Both editions will only be available directly from Queen Games. Now, first off the bat, no plans is not the same as will never happen. And that is always a tricky one, but it does sound like they're trying to sell it directly themselves, and especially with having multiple Kickstarters lined up, it would seem to be not great or not in their own best interest to pivot right after the first Kickstarter, because they have a whole bunch more lined up and people will feel a little betrayed if they, suddenly change their plans. Which means that we can't compare this to a typical Queen Games Kickstarter. See, the problem with Queen Games, and I know we haven't even talked about the actual games yet, so we'll get to it. We'll talk about everything in timestamps down below if you want to skip to whatever section is relevant to you. So the problem with Queen Games is that their Kickstarters are generally overpriced because they very heavily fixate on that high MSRP value when they are focusing on their Kickstarters, and they don't focus on what the typical game will sell for on the aftermarket on any local online game store or whatnot. Which means that generally I recommend staying away from their Kickstarters. But that whole equation changes very drastically when those games won't enter typical retail. When the Kickstarter MSRP price that they are setting and charging on their game is the only option to get it, it changes the entire equation. So, let's talk about the actual games, and then let's come back to should you back it, should you not, what are the pledge levels, what are the options. But it is both an opportunity to get rare and expensive out-of-print games, potentially with updated new rule sets, and it's also an expensive but yet no other viable alternative way to get it. So it is what it is, and it's going to be hard to make decisions, or at least maybe it will, maybe it won't. For me, I will note, if you watched my video yesterday, top 10 Euro games, then you already know that Bruges, which is what Hamburg is based on, Hamburg is a reprint or re-updated edition of Bruges, well, Bruges is one of my favorite games of all time, and yet despite that, I am not backing this Kickstarter. So, let's talk about the games. Let's talk about what's going on here. So, this collection, as I said already, is divided up into a bunch of games. And currently what we have in this Kickstarter is we have Hamburg and Amsterdam, which are the first two. And Hamburg is a reprint of Bruges, and Amsterdam is a reprint of Macau. Now, Hamburg, they have given us enough details on that I could talk about to some degree. Versus Amsterdam, they have been a little bit more shy about the gameplay details in terms of the differences in the game. There clearly are differences. We can see that by looking at the map alone. Not just art, but there clearly are gameplay differences, but the degree is not clearly elucidated. versus with Hamburg, they pretty much clearly went through the various changes between Bruges and Hamburg. That being said, they're all changes to some degree, which is why one of the reasons they have all these new titles. They are updating the games. They are incorporating the expansion, which is nice. Macau didn't have an expansion. Bruges does have an expansion, the City on the Zwin, and they are incorporating that into the base game, which is a plus, and we'll come back to that. As far as what goes on, the differences between Hamburg and Bruges is listed right over here. Bruges, as I mentioned yesterday in my top 10 Euro video, it is one of my favorite games, and one of the reasons I love that is in every game of Bruges, you are constantly drawing cards and pivoting your plans every single round based on which cards you drew, based on what happened, based on what your opponents are doing, which of the majorities you're trying to score. It is a game that you are simultaneously planning for the future while it's essential that you are able to pivot every single turn, because every single turn presents new opportunities, new ways for you to vary how the game is going to be played out. At the same time, you're constantly managing, you're constantly trying to juggle the balance of these threats that are coming out from the game. These threats that are going to threaten to take away your money, to take away your workers, to take away your buildings, your houses. The game is constantly throwing things at you, and you can't just simply try to get rid of threats. You can do it, but it's inefficient. The real goal of this game is to strategically balance and manage when those threats hit you in such a way that you are not disadvantaged as much as you could otherwise have been, or alternatively to build up an engine of powers and abilities that reward you for getting rid of these threats. And it's a great game. I love it. I should really just do a full review on it, but it is a great game. I love Bruges. I do recommend it. But as far as what the differences are, so to begin with, we have the game now lasts exactly 8 rounds. The cards are split into, so instead in Bruges, the way it worked is there were 2 decks that would slowly run down, and once one of those decks ran out, the game would end, which allowed for a variable end game state that I liked. And in this game, they're switching it to the game now lasts exactly 8 rounds. Do I think it's bad? Good? I like it the way it is now, but I don't think it's particularly bad either. The cards are split into 5 decks based on color. You may draw cards from any deck. So instead of having 2 decks where you can constantly choose and hope your color comes up, this takes away some of the luck aspect of the game and gives you more control, which I can hear it being better or worse. Again, I like it in its current state. I have no real complaints, but I can certainly see this being a different attempt. That being said, you can also just do this with your existing copy of Bruges, meaning these are 2 rule changes you can just implement on your own. You don't need the new game to do this. There's a new wild threat color, black, so there's a new version of a threat that is more variable. It's different, it's not as standard. I think it's interesting. Again, could take it or leave it. I'm curious what it adds to the game. We have variable endgame points based on how the dice are rolled during the game. I don't honestly know a lot about the St. Michael's Church. I haven't looked into that, so I'm not going to overly comment. The all ships are in play, and they're activated on 3s and 4s. I'm okay with that. Don't have a problem with it. Don't particularly carry the way. And then more gameplay tweaks plus all expansions, meaning in this game you have the expansion, the City on the Zwin, is incorporated into the game. In Macau, they have some of the different differences listed. We have almost every card has been revised. The building and person cards split in separate decks. District cards replace office cards and have new effects. Market cards determine tribute. 9 types of goods and 36 space for resources. And distance between the warehouse ports have been decreased. So they have listed some of the changes, but the biggest thing is in terms of to what degree the whole decks have been revised. I don't know how that actually plays out. So that's an overview of the 2 games that's going on here. Personally speaking, as far as myself, while I like Macau, I don't love it. I think it's a good game with elements that are, I guess, not as good as I like. I'm far more intrigued with the changes they are making here because of the fact that, to me, Macau is a solid game that I eventually moved on from, versus Bruges is one of my top games of all time. I thoroughly enjoy Bruges. So, what are they charging for these games? Now, we've covered briefly the games. We focused more on an overview of them as opposed to the full gameplay, but what are they charging for these games? So, they're charging $65 plus shipping for either of these 2 games, or alternatively, you can go to $130 for both, which is basically the same price, no particular deal there. Additionally, we have $99 for the deluxe, or $99 for the deluxe of either of the deluxe editions of the game. We'll cover what the deluxe covers, or what it comes with. So it's an extra $25 for those deluxe versions. So you have to factor in whether that's worth it to you. And then again, similarly, you can upgrade to get an all-in of getting both of those. Additionally, you have the deluxe edition bundle comes with, where is it? Sorry, over here. Additionally, over here we have the $3.95, which buys both the games in this Kickstarter, plus the deluxe versions of the next Kickstarter, but this also comes with a bonus metal coin box. So, let's go through all of that. What's in that? So, in addition to the gameplay changes, these games feature all new updated art. Speaking for myself, and this is only a personal opinion, this is just my opinion over here, I hate the new art on both. I don't think the new art looks better, I think it looks worse. I will grant I am generally a naysayer when it comes to new art in games. Sometimes I have been converted down the road as I see, as it sticks with me and as I have more opportunity to examine it. I can be converted, but oftentimes I'm not, so it goes both ways. But I'm certainly not a fan of the new art, and I'm happier with the art on my copy of Bruges. Macau I don't feel the need to own, at least until I see any reason to believe this is a significantly better game than the original Macau. I mean, I said Macau. Amsterdam I don't feel the need to own. In terms of the expansion, so it includes the harbor boats, we have tasks, we have docks, we have stock market, the zoo cards. This is basically including the City on the Zwin and the pet expansion in this game. The deluxe edition features different artwork, so it's more of a refined, elegant art or whatnot. It includes game trays, which is a nice perk for considering the fact that the upgrade is only $25. We have, again, new art on the editions, we have game trays, we have acrylic upgrades, which is nice, printed meeples, challenge coins, all that for $25, which all things considered is not bad considering game trays inserts alone, if you're buying them aftermarket, will cost you that much. So it's not a bad upgrade if you care about these things. I will admit to not being personally impressed by either the art or look of these acrylic standees. That being said, I don't know how they would actually play out in real life or whatnot, and I would say because of the game trays alone, plus I prefer the art of these boxes, I myself, if I were backing these from a personal level, we haven't talked about the financial level yet, from a personal level, I would probably end up going with the deluxe upgraded editions of these two games. Again, bunch of caveats and things coming soon. We have box sleeves for those who prefer the classic artwork. They include a box sleeve features art in the front and an alternate night version on the back, as well as a side panorama in day and night. And then additionally, there's all unlocked stretch goals. So that is an overview of what you're getting here. Oh wait, let's cover one last thing. If you get the full $3.95 bundle, then you also get a coin box that can be utilized for whichever of these games you have coins for or you need them for. It gives you a whole bunch of metal coins for this game, which is not bad considering the fact that it's the same price, although giving up your money significantly in advance, meaning an extra $200 is being given up years in advance, or I don't know exactly how long, but a while in advance. So it's not a terrible incentive to actually give up your money early. It's up to you. Are you willing to drop $400 on a bunch of euros? Because I mean, $400 is not necessarily a lot of money if you compare it to the Massive Darkness campaign that just ended. You know, your all-in pledge would have been $400 alone. But when compared to a typical euro and what they are bringing in terms of components and whatnot, this is definitely a lot of money, and the deluxeifiedness of these games doesn't necessarily compare to many other deluxeified games out there, such as Burnt Island Games or TMG or any of these companies that do deluxeified games. What you're getting here doesn't seem to be up to that level of quality. While the $25 upgrade from 65 to 95, I don't think that 65 to 99. Am I say 25? $25, yeah, $25 upgrade. Nope. Ignore my math. The entire time I've been saying $25 when it is I'm focusing on the 90 instead of 99. It is a $35 upgrade. Jeez. So while the $35 upgrade I don't think is terrible for what you're getting extra, I think the $65 base price is the part that I am skeptical of. The $65 base price is effectively Queen Games saying, hey, here's our MSRP, here's what we value our games at, and you can't get it elsewhere, so what are your options going to be? Should you back it? This is a tough one. Ultimately and sadly, if you want these games, the answer is probably yes. It's probably yes, because if you wanted to buy Bruges on the aftermarket right now, because you can't get it in retail, if you wanted to buy it on the aftermarket right now, Bruges is a game that if we hop on over to Board Game Geek, on the marketplace over here, it's $85, and I'm pretty sure it's for the base game alone. Let's just check. Yep, this is for the base game alone, $85, and that's a typical price. In fact, I'd almost argue that's almost a good price for this game right now. So if you want to get Bruges, it's going to cost you more than the price that Queen Games is charging just for the base game alone. Forget the expansion, and also forget whether you personally value those changes and consider them an improvement. Because, I mean, the changes are from Stefan Feld, the designer of the game, so they may very well be an improvement. Not all changes, even by the designer, are. Sometimes they're tweaks that no one needed or asked for, but until I've played it myself, I'm not going to be overly critical. I'll assume he knows what he's doing far better than my cursory opinion of what's going on. And so that could well be a very good price considering you have no other options. As far as the secondary market, I don't know. I mean, I think this game will hold its value, if nothing else. And this is where numbers are interesting. Numbers are an interesting thing. Let's take a little bit of a tangent to look at numbers. As of right now, we have 2,700 backers for this game. Expect that to be in the range of 3,000 to 3,500 before the campaign ends. Possibly more if they do really well, but let's say 3,500. Okay, that's not bad at all. If we look at Bruges, Bruges currently has 11,000 people who own this game with 180 trading. Now, that's really more than 11,000, by the way. Let's see, and this is, again, numbers are a fun little divergent thing. But if we look at Hate, which is a Kickstarter exclusive game, we have 10,000 people who backed it. And then on Board Game Geek, we have, over here, we have 2,000 who own it. So 2,000 people out of 10,000 who mark this as owned. And I picked a Kickstarter exclusive game because that way we know how many are in the wild, so to speak. Or if you look at, so that's 1/5. 1/5 of the people who have this game marked it as owned. If you look at Kingdom Death Monster, we have 9,600 who marked it as owned, and supposedly, according to according to Adam Poots, who came out with the game, there's over 30,000 copies in the wild. So again, that's 1/3. So just using these two games as a reference point, and again, this is back of the napkin math. This is not a hard proof of anything, but that we can assume to some degree that between 1/3 or 1/5 of hardcore game owners are marking it as owned on Board Game Geek. So that 11,000 owned is probably closer to 30 to 50,000 owned copies, of which 180 are being offered for trade on Board Game Geek. And of course, people trade in other platforms, people sell on other platforms, but I'm just using one reference point to give some context to numbers. So 180 out of 30 to 50,000, what can we expect out of these 3,000? 3,500, 3,500 or whatnot. Because that might be, I mean, just using those numbers as a reference point, that would be 18 copies for trade. Now, it's going to be higher than that because inherently when things are new, they move at a faster rate. That 180 is a snapshot in time. But how many of these copies are likely to see the secondary market? How many of these copies are likely to be sold? For sure there will be, and a lot more than 18, but it's not going to be a tremendously high number, especially considering that there is no other market to get this game, and that means people can ask the prices they want to a degree. Now, the good news as to why you can potentially skip on this, is Queen Games is going to do another Kickstarter, and you can bet they're going to offer these games too because, again, money. Money's not a bad thing. People like money, and they'll offer these games as part of the second Kickstarter as well. Queen Games generally does have a history of offering their prior products in those future Kickstarters. So you will have the opportunity to get these later. It will likely be at the same price too. They generally don't knock up their prices on the same exact game. The bad news is they stick to MSRP. The good news is they stick to MSRP. So it does work both ways. So if you are on the fence, you can probably wait till the next Kickstarter. Maybe one of your friends is getting the game. You try this out. You see if it's for you. Sure, it's out of print. Sure, this is a great time to get it. Cheaper than the market. But if you're not in a rush and you can play your friend's copy, wait till the next Kickstarter. See how it plays out. The flip side is, if your friend's not backing it, if you're the only one who's looking at this, and you don't want to wait a year and a half to just see if you can figure out whether you are or are not getting this, or if you are or are not interested in the next one, then yeah, $65 plus shipping is, comparatively speaking, compared to your alternative options, it is not a bad buy considering you are getting the expansions included. For myself, I'm not backing it because I like the art and game that I currently have for Bruges. Again, for Macau, I'm not backing it until I see a reason to believe it's a better game, a different game, something better than the original was. But for Bruges, I like it in its current format. I like it a lot. It is a great game. I thoroughly enjoy it. I thoroughly enjoy the art I have. I didn't consider any of these changes to be flaws in the previous game, so I'm totally fine with what I have. And I'll hold on to what I have. And maybe down the road, if the clear consensus seems to be that this is better, then maybe I'll change my mind. And part of what's niggling in the back of my head, and should sadly niggle in the back of your heads as well, is the fact that because this is one of 4 games, well, 2 of 4 games, because of the fact that they mentioned already they're probably doing 8 games plus, if you want your copies, if you want your set to feel like it's part of the same collection, then you might be stuck. You might have to factor that into your decision, because as of right now, what we have is we have reprints of Bruges and we have reprints of Macau. In the next set, I don't know if it's where it is over here, but in the next set they said already is going to be a reprint of Rialto. New York is going to be a reprint of Rialto, and Marrakesh is going to be its own game. So I've played Rialto, and similarly to Macau, I have no real need for it, but Marrakesh I'm certainly interested in. And what are the other 4 games that are coming down the road? And do I want them all in one nice, glorious matching box set? Have they improved Rialto and Macau enough that maybe I'm intrigued, especially because it looks pretty on a shelf? These are all fun questions that are expensive to answer. So ultimately, what it comes down to at the end of everything is this is probably a good back. If only because Queen Games is limiting the availability to only distribution through themselves. Not a guarantee, but they're implying or saying there are currently no plans for distribution. As far as what you should do, it's up to you. What I recommend you do if you're on the fence is go to yukata.de. Yukata, in fact, one second. So this is yukata.de. You can head on over here, and they have Bruges as well as, let me see what we have over here. We have Bruges, and here we go. We have Bruges over here and Macau over here that you can play over here. Macau and Bruges are both available to play. Is Rialto available? Rialto is not available over here. But basically, these are out-of-print games, but you can give them a shot. You can see if they are for you. You can see if these games are something that you are interested in. I think the implementation of both of them on Yukata is excellent. I have been playing Bruges a lot online. It is worth giving it a shot. So yeah, if you're on the fence, if you don't want to pay those high prices, give it a shot on Yukata. Give it a shot online. We're in lockdown. We're not full lockdown. We're in pandemic. We're social distancing. This is a great time to see both what online games feel like, as well as whether these games are for you. And if they are, then yeah, it's a good back. But if they're not, or if you're on the fence, you can always kick that bucket down the road and see whether it's a game for you later in the next Kickstarter. That's basically it. It's a complicated one because I expected to walk into this one saying it's not a good back because Queen Games generally aren't. But when they make their things exclusive, it changes the whole equation. So yes, this one is a safe back. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed. This one bothered me a little bit, and it is what it is. They're unfortunately, at the end of the day, they are asking a price that is reasonable because it is the best available option. But like CMON, like other companies, sometimes they are taking advantage of the fact that an exclusive is always worth more because there's no real competition for it. Either way, let me know in the comments down below. What are you doing? What are you not? Most importantly, what I'm most interested in hearing, if you already have these games, if you already have Bruges, if you already have Macau, are you backing them? Are you not? Why or why not? I'd love to know. For me, it's about the art and just not being pulled in by the changes, combined with the high price point, although granted, not as high as the actual value of my out-of-print copy right now. Anyways, once again, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. As usual, you can subscribe down below, ring the bell for notifications, and comment letting me know what you're doing and why. And until next time, have a good one.